Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live event brought to you by Teaching English with the British Council. Before I introduce our speakers today, please let us know in the comments where are you watching us from and how many languages do your students speak? And for many teachers, that number is higher than what's written on the timetable. And that's the gap between what schools plan for and what actually happens in classrooms is exactly what we are here today for and what our conversation will be about. And today is International Mother Language Day. So, marhaban everyone. It feels like the right day to talk about what happens when learners bring more than one language into the room. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Nair Ibrahim, and also not sure if Gail will join us, but hopefully she'll be able to connect. Nair and Gail are the authors of Moving Between Languages, Translanguaging Pedagogy with Picture Books, and their article looks at how teachers can work with multilingual reality rather than maybe trying to ignore it. Hello, Nair.
Hello, hi.
Hi. Maybe I want to start maybe with the term itself because translanguaging can sometimes sound abstract. Um, so if you were to explain translanguaging to a colleague in a staff room, how would you describe it?
Well, I think I would use exactly the title of our article, actually, Moving Between Languages. Can you hear me? My picture's going a bit, yeah.
Yes.
So it is moving between languages and it's using your full linguistic repertoire to basically communicate, because sometimes you're in situations where you can use more than one language, where other people in the room also know other languages, and where you have a similar not just language, but also the similar linguistic and cultural references. So you can actually switch between languages, and not just because you don't know the words, but because it just makes more sense when you switch between languages, when you switch between codes, when you switch between concepts. So I think that's translanguaging, and we do it all the time. And especially when you live in a multilingual context. So when you're in a context that's not your own, you start using languages. You start using the local language, your own language, your mother tongue, English, all in the same context, or in the same communicative context, or in the same community, in the same conversation. So I think, translanguaging itself has quite a history. I don't know if you want me to go into that a little bit, but it is actually a term that was coined for education. It was actually coined for supporting bilingual education in Wales, where both Welsh and English were being used in the classroom. And in that case, we were actually supporting Welsh in education. And then it's just sort of become a term that we use to describe this ability that we have of using multiple languages in conversations, in communication.
Oh, brilliant. I didn't know that it comes from Welsh. Uh, and
Yeah,
Gail is here. That's brilliant. We can
Yes,
bring her in. Hi,
lovely.
Gail.
Hi.
I'm
Hi.
on my mobile phone.
Oh, that's
Okay.
okay. We can
Yeah.
see you very clearly. Um, Maybe, Gail, you can also tell us a bit about, in the article, you distinguish between everyday multilingual talk and pedagogical translanguaging. Can you maybe say a bit about this?
Yeah, well, simultaneous translanguaging is when people, as Nair just explained, just use the languages they have, that they know, that they use, and they use them, and they change and move between one language to another, depending on the context they're in, depending who they're talking to. They may use, for example, I live in a French-speaking context. I may use just French, or I may use just English. But very often what I do is use both English and French in the same sentence. So that's a kind of a natural way of translanguaging. What we're talking about is a planned and systematic pedagogical translanguaging, where the teacher actually plans and integrates the children's languages in her class for a specific purpose, for input and for output. So that's the kind of difference between the two types of translanguaging.
So you'd say maybe it's more intentional and it's not accidental.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Oh, can you hear me? Can the audience hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me,
Yeah.
Gail? Yeah.
Can't hear
I think
you.
it's, oh,
Sound's gone.
I'm not sure what's the issue, but maybe if you open the live, you can maybe hear me on Facebook. If the audience can hear me, fine. Okay. Well, I'll move on with Nair until maybe you can mute it and unmute it again. I think everyone can hear me, so it might be just for you, Gail. So I'll return to you, Nair. Would you say that this is more intentional than accidental?
I think in the classroom and the focus of translanguaging is intentional. And when it was created, the whole concept was created, as I said, in Wales, it was an intentional use of two languages. So, for example, you would have a text in English, and then the children would perhaps answer questions around this text, this English text, in Norwegian, or in Welsh, sorry, because we're talking about Wales in this case. I hope people are hearing me, because I'm just going to continue speaking as I'm the only one left on screen.
No, we can hear you very well. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And then they would, so they would answer questions on this English text in Welsh. Then they would perhaps do another activity around the text in English, and then perhaps in the end create a poster in Welsh. So all of these different stages where the different languages are used are planned by the teacher. So the English text is selected by the teacher. The questions in Welsh are then written out by the teacher, etc. So there's this kind of backwards and forwards with these two languages, and used in through different activities, which is how this bilingual approach is developed. So, which means the children are getting the language or vocabulary, for example, in both English and Welsh. And I think that's so it's based on that approach that we use then, that we are bringing translanguaging into this whole idea of using picture books, where the teacher can, you're not going to plan a lesson with 100 different languages, but you can plan where children's languages can be included. You can plan a moment where, for example, okay, the book is about balloons. Where can I bring in the children's languages, where the children can also give me the word for balloon in their own languages, and perhaps also in the language of the context where they're living. So, so it's about sort of a change of mindset for the teachers, where they're not necessarily only planning, okay, what are the children going to learn in English, but also at what point can we also invite, because it's an invitation, isn't it? At what point can we invite the children's languages into the learning process? Because that can also help scaffolding. It can help scaffold the learning, and it can help the children understand their learning, or the concepts, for example, in the picture book better. And at the same time, it also gives the children an opportunity to show their identity, and the fact that their identity includes a different culture, it includes a different language. And I think we don't do that enough in classrooms with our children.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And as much as language is about communication, it's also about identity and bringing that confidence in the classroom. And I'm looking here at our audience. They're coming from many countries, many backgrounds. We have um, greetings from Sri Lanka, Malaysia. Um, we have Sudan as well, Kurdistan, um, Aljazair, so Algeria, Cambodia. Welcome, everyone. And if you have any questions for Gail and Nair, please leave them in the chat as we go through their article. I'll move to maybe the next part, which is one of the most practical choices in the article, and that is the focus on picture books. So maybe why picture books in particular for multilingual classrooms? Let me see if Gail can hear us again. Can you
So
hear us,
maybe
Gail?
why picture books in particular for multilingual classrooms?
Oh, I think
She's
we can
gone
hear.
again.
I can hear my own voice. Yeah, from Gail. But you can go ahead, Nair.
Right, yeah, okay. I mean, picture books are great. I mean, we just about to start a whole course on picture books here with my students. And because picture books give you so many ways into the language. You've got the images, not just the story, but also the illustrations, but the whole book itself, you know, the whole book, the design of the book, the front cover, the back cover, the choice of languages, etc. Picture books also, it's not just about language. And I think that's the important thing about using children's literature in English language education, is that it goes beyond language. Once you get the building blocks dealt with in terms of vocabulary, then you can also look at the themes in the picture book. And the themes can cover all different types of themes. We have obviously now at the moment quite a strong focus on climate change and the environment. So a lot of books are coming out around that theme, for example. There's a lot on diversity and mixed families and social issues. There's a lot of focus on migration and refugees as well. And all of these all of these picture books also bring in culture and language. So, which means that the picture books are dealing with real situations that are very much present in our classrooms today, meaning our classrooms are very diverse today. Our classrooms, all classrooms, I would say, will have children from minority groups, from who are children of immigrants. Maybe they are born in the country or not born in the country, but there will be children in the classroom that have different cultures. Now, just a very quick example, I am working in northern Norway, actually in the Arctic Circle. So, I'm looking out my window, it's wonderfully snowy, and we have the northern lights at night, the whole thing. Very small town, yet every classroom has students that do not have Norwegian as their mother tongue. And these students bring their languages into the school, and they will inevitably bring their languages into their English classrooms as well. So the reality of linguistic diversity is big and is real across all our teaching contexts. So I think we need to engage with that reality. And one thing that I've worked with picture books for many, many years, and Gail was actually my mentor in bringing picture books into the classroom. I started working with her in 1998 in Paris. And I think one of the first courses I probably taught was a full course on using the picture book and using the picture book as your resource So not just a course book, but the picture book was your resource. It was your teaching material. And around a picture book, there's so much work you can do that includes not just linguistic, so grammar, vocabulary, but also cross-curricular work, and then looking at some of the deeper themes in terms of values, interculturality, etc. So I think and lately, one of the other areas that I have become interested in is dual language picture books, where two languages are used. Now we can, and there are many dual language picture books in terms of where English is used plus another language. So it could be English and Spanish. There are a lot of picture books from North America, and especially from the United States, where English and Spanish are used. So I think I would say that the majority of dual language Spanish-English books are actually published in the States. And I have to refer to the Super Bowl. I don't usually watch the Super Bowl. I really did like this one. Spanish is such an important language across the American continent. So the reality of these languages that have sometimes been hidden away, hidden in the background, or not acknowledged, not used in the classroom, are now quite visible in dual language picture books. But you know, Spanish is one of those languages. It's a big language. It's in that particular context. But other languages that are smaller and that have suffered more in terms of their own survival, and that is the indigenous languages. So having dual language picture books in English or in the majority language, whether it's English, whether it's Norwegian in my context, plus an indigenous language, actually gives more visibility to this indigenous language in across the world, actually, because I'm working in a context where the indigenous language, the Sami languages, which is not just one language, it is actually 9 different languages, where the Sami languages have to fight for survival. And for example, my university has a national responsibility for supporting and teaching 2 of the Sami languages, so Lule Sami and South Sami. That means that we need material to work with. So dual language picture books in for example, Norwegian and Sami are important resources to bring into the classroom. But I think what we've done with our article isn't only about dual language picture books. And I think that's the interesting, I wish Gail was here, because we had this discussion when we were thinking about writing this article. Our first go-to resources, okay, we'll talk about dual language picture books. But then I thought, but we don't need to only talk about dual language picture books, because it's actually the methodology you use that's going to allow you to use any picture book. And, you know, and I think we should have access to all picture books in our classroom. So we can use, and that's why if you look at our article, we've got a list of all the different types of picture books that exist out there. So they can be just your English language picture books. They could be a picture book that you like in the majority language, for example, in Spanish or French, and then that you work with in the classroom through a translanguaging approach. It could be a dual language picture book, like I've worked with a dual language picture book in both Norwegian and Sami. Now, they're not necessarily languages that I know, like Sami, or know very well, like Norwegian, but we use this picture book through English. So we were literally having 3 languages in this particular lesson. And I think the important thing here is that if you use a translanguaging approach, then any language can be included, which means any picture book can be included. And you don't have to exclude another picture, a picture book, because, oh, well, that's not English, therefore I can't use that picture book. So I think that's why we focused on this translanguaging approach to in picture book methodology as well.
I'll try to bring Gail here. That's all fantastic. I loved hearing about the Sami languages. I know that it's one of the indigenous languages in Norway. Let me try to bring
I'll try to
Gail.
bring
Can
Gail here. It's
you?
all fantastic.
I can still
I
hear my
loved
own
hearing about the
voice.
Sami languages. Yes.
Um, I'm not sure what's the problem, but we can continue with you, Nair.
Okay.
But if Gail, you can hear me, then maybe you can mute the computer and speak, because we could hear you when you spoke before.
Yeah, we could actually. Yeah.
So picture books do work on many levels at once. They combine images, emotions, and language, and that I think makes them accessible to learners with different linguistic backgrounds. I remember the first time I used the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and it always works with young learners. It motivates them because of the pictures, and it's something they can all relate to. So it brings their own lingual vocabulary or repertoire, and then they want to translate that maybe. So you, in the article, you bring that distinction between the different kind of picture books. Can you tell us maybe a bit more about the different kind of picture books that teachers can use?
Yeah, I mean, we identified different types of picture books, and I think the important thing about so what did we've got, first of all, picture books, monolingual picture books. Now, monolingual picture books can be picture books in English, or there can be picture books, in Norwegian. There can be French picture books. There can be Spanish picture books. There can be Portuguese picture books, because every culture has some amazing picture books that, for example, do not exist in English. Then you can also, and then of course there are picture books in the students' languages, and that's also the interesting element in using this translanguaging approach, is that the children themselves can select a picture book in their language and bring it into class, and then we can look at ways of working around and with that picture book in English. We've also got, as I was already explaining, dual language picture books, which have the dual language picture books can come in different formats. So you can have a dual language picture book with two languages that appear in language blocks. Okay, so you'd have one block in English, and then on the side you've got the translation in another language, or vice versa, whichever the translation is. So you've got English and Spanish, for example. In some cases, the picture books are, so these are what we call, so these are you've also got translingual picture books, where the languages are actually mixed in the sentence. So you may have a base sentence in English, for example, and then in that base sentence, you actually, you can add some Spanish words or some French words. So you've got that kind of a translingual picture book, and that translingual picture books really do reflect this whole translanguaging definition that that I talked about at the beginning, this moving between languages. And then you've also got, and then obviously when you've got the two languages, the other interesting thing about using dual language picture books is not just the fact that they've got two different languages. Therefore, one of the languages is the minority language is visible on the page. The other important element is, where do these languages appear on the page? How are they positioned? So you can have an important discussion about the positioning of languages and how that reflects the importance of a particular language, even in society. And what happens with when you analyze dual language picture books, you will see that sometimes the majority language, let's say English, appears on top. But in many cases, you actually see the minority language. Minority meaning it's not the main language, perhaps in that particular context, appear on top. And so that's either the heritage language, the indigenous language, and that is a sort of, that's that's putting the way society views these languages upside down in giving importance to the heritage language or to the indigenous language, which perhaps in society is not as visible as the minority language. So dual language picture books also have that interplay with how languages are viewed and treated in society. And then through the creation of a dual language picture book and the decision, for example, to put the indigenous language first, I think you can, put a much stronger focus and spotlight on the existence of that language in that particular context, and you can have these discussions with the children. Why has this language been positioned in this particular place in the book? So every design decision you make about a picture book will have an impact on what you're trying to communicate about these languages or about the concepts. So those are the dual language picture books. And then you have translated picture books. In some cases, the picture book may appear. You have separate picture books in different languages. You were talking about The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Well, The Very Hungry Caterpillar has been translated into nearly over 45 languages. So you can, and that's another opportunity, is to bring in, so The Very Hungry Caterpillar in the language, in the majority language of the country that you might be working in, and perhaps it already exists in some of the children's languages. So bringing in these like a picture book in multiple languages allows you also, and that's the other thing that you will notice in the article, is how the strategies you can use to engage with these books. So, for example, these dual language, these translated picture books can allow you to focus on vocabulary, on cognates. Okay, which languages, which words are the same across languages? Which words are very, very different across languages? Can we also develop children's ability to identify, like intercomprehension? Can they find words that are similar or not? Can they guess words from context, even though they don't actually know the language? And in that way, you're actually allowing the children to go into a language that is not well known, and yet through these strategies they start discovering the language. And then of course we also have wordless picture books, and wordless picture books can give you quite a lot of possibilities in terms of what you can do with them, because there aren't any words. You can put any words you want into the picture book. So you can have the children, you can work with the picture book in English and then have the children add paragraphs or add words in their own languages. And you can actually create a translingual text around a wordless picture book if you want. So I think they have great potential. The other type of picture book that we have are the ABC and the counting books, which once again look at quite and they seem to be quite simple. We say, oh, we're counting books, and we're going to learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or A, B, C, D. But there are some really interesting counting books, and I think one of the books that we mentioned in the article focuses on South Africa. So counting, it's basically counting 1 to 10 in Zulu. And it's not just about counting 1 to 10 in Zulu, which we can all learn, which is an interesting opportunity to learn about an African language. But each page that focuses on a number is also engaging with some kind of cultural element or historical element in South Africa. For example, there is a page that engages children in a discussion around apartheid. What was that? Why was it there? How did apartheid, how did it develop? How did it impact on the population in South Africa? What was this discrimination against a particular population? So there you can bring in social issues. So that number, I think it's actually number 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken, in the book, in the picture book. So that one number allows you to have a major discussion around a social issue and around discrimination, racism, if you want. So it's not just about counting and access to a different language, which is also very interesting, of course. You can also find, nowadays, you can find loads of YouTube videos of people counting in different languages, for example. So the children can actually hear a Zulu speaker counting from 1 to 10. But it also allows you to go into the more like deeper. So there's a lot of opportunity for deeper reading and deeper thinking and discussions around the different elements that these books bring up
let's take some of the comments. So here. A question about the extent of the use of translanguaging in the classroom. There's also from Ruhit, with picture books, we can mitigate language barriers, especially in linguistically diverse classrooms. And we have another comment from, can't pronounce the name. It's about the effectiveness of picture books. And how learners can easily recognize what is the picture showing. And that's the idea you were actually also explaining, and how it can relate to their culture and bring to the surface maybe social and political issues that can be hard to speak without pictures. I have a question about maybe if the teacher is bilingual, is just speaking in English, so they don't understand other languages. How would translanguaging work in the classroom? And also maybe one concern that teachers have sometimes is about language policy in their schools and, you know, speak English only policy. So how do you mitigate those challenges?
I mean, okay, firstly, in terms of the teachers not understanding all the languages or knowing all the languages in the classroom, I mean, obviously, we are not expecting teachers to learn their children's like 10 languages, because sometimes you've got loads of languages in the classroom. But then I think we need to hand over to the children. So if we are going to bring in, I mean, I would imagine that a teacher, if they were to choose a dual language picture book, that they would choose a dual language picture book in 2 languages that they know. So for example, if you're working in a French context, perhaps you find a dual language picture book in English and French, and you can work with that, because if French is the common language or the shared classroom language, then you would assume that most of the children at least have that knowledge of French in order to be able to move between the 2 languages. In terms of using children's languages, I think that's where we need to hand over to the children and give them space to share their language, to share words perhaps from the picture book in their own language, or give them time to go and look up these words in their own language, and then share these words with the classroom. So I think it's more a matter of the teacher planning these translanguaging moments, if you want to call them translanguaging moments in the classroom, where, okay, is this a moment where I use the majority language that all the students share, or is it a moment where I'm handing over to the children and we're looking at a glossary, if you want, a multilingual glossary, and then the children bring in their own languages and they create the glossary. So it's not about the teacher knowing or having to learn all the children's languages, even though I have been in situations where the teachers go away and they actually learn like how to say hello, good morning, thank you, goodbye in the children's languages. And I think that's a wonderful way of acknowledging that there are different languages in the classroom, and also a show of respect for the children's languages and for these languages, because the teacher actually took the trouble to learn a couple of words in these languages. But we're not asking the teachers to, you know, learn the children's languages. That's not the point. I think it's about how, and that's what's interesting about translanguaging, is translanguaging can be done at so many different levels. And if one of these levels is handing over to the children and allowing the children's languages to exist, to be seen, to be heard in the classroom, that's already that's a very strong message to the children about the importance of their languages in the learning process. And then also, I mean, if you look at the article, there are strategies that we have at the end of the article. There are quite a few strategies that we have listed in that, in how the teachers can use the different types of picture books in the classroom. So, but there was a question about the extent of translanguaging. Yeah, I think it probably depends on the context. And I think we also need to distinguish translanguaging, so this constant moving between languages, from, for example, only teaching in the majority language. So let's say here in Norway, a teacher only uses Norwegian in the English classroom. So that's not really helping the children either. The idea of translanguaging is moving backwards and forwards. So yes, we can bring in Norwegian when necessary, but we move back into English again. And then perhaps we can give the children a space to bring in their own languages, and then perhaps we come back into English again. So, and I think teachers in these highly multilingual contexts, like, I mean, we had people from Malaysia, etc. This is probably happening on a regular basis, and they're not even aware of it or thinking about the fact that they are doing this language movement all the time, you see. So yeah, so I think it depends on, so I would think that it would depend on the context. And then there was the other question about the school policy. And that's a difficult one. I mean, I have to admit, I don't know what the solution is there. Perhaps in the space of the classroom, the teacher can bring in a bit of, can use children's languages to support, to scaffold learning and understanding. And perhaps a teacher can focus on pictures, because pictures come up a lot. I mean, in the comments, the focus on the illustrations communicate meaning. And so how do we use that to our advantage? Perhaps that's one way of getting around these policies, these very rigid policies about languages, because languages don't exist in silos. Languages are constantly moving between each other. And I think we need to eventually get to a point where we just accept that reality, actually.
Mm-hmm. Rather than maybe fight it. I don't know, Gail, I put you on stage. You can hear us. Can you hear me, Gail?
We can't
again,
hear
can
Gail.
You can't hear me? Oh,
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
we can hear you, finally.
Can you hear me?
Yes, finally.
Okay.
So maybe we can end with you, Gail. I'm really sorry about the technical problems.
Yeah.
We were hoping to hear from you as well. Nair also explained very thoroughly
Yes,
and helped
she
us
did.
understand more about translanguaging. Maybe we can talk a bit more about the strategies that you mentioned in the article. For a new teacher who would like to maybe start with translanguaging, which of the strategies do you think you'd start with? And which of the strategies do you think is more the most impactful? So throughout time,
well, I
it
can
does
give you. Can you?
make an impact on learners.
Okay. Can you hear me? I can give you an example
Yes.
from my own experience, and that's related to using wordless picture books. And I used, for example, The Snowman, which is a wordless picture book, was one of the first picture books that I ever used in French-speaking context. The shared classroom language was French, although the other children spoke, several languages between them. But we mediated the wordless picture book just as you could, for example, this one, which is called, this is Bluebird. And we'll look at the title again in a minute, but you mediate the wordless picture book in the children's own language, or the shared classroom language, and you build up the story gradually in English, but they are reading the pictures, interpreting the pictures. It gives them a voice, it gives them creativity, it gives them ownership of the story, if you like. And that's the power, I think, of these wordless picture books. So gradually they can see that using the shared classroom language, in this case French, it served as a kind of a bridge or a stepping stone to learning English. It was the children creating the story in a language they knew, and I was recasting and giving the English, so that in the end we had the output in English. And another, so that's one strategy that I think is very easy to use. Another strategy is looking at titles of picture books. This picture book here, I don't know if you can see it, it's called, in English, it's Bluebird, but I have the French, it's a wordless picture book. I have the French version, and the title in French is Gris Bleu, which literally means grey blue, because they are the dominant colours used throughout the visual narrative. And it's very interesting to discuss the different why publishers have chosen different titles to the original title, and they can also, children can also translate the title into one of their own languages. So I think those are two quite useful strategies to begin with. In the article, we talk about another picture book where you can do this mixed. So have a look at the article for that. And one thing I think that's really important to finish off with is that translanguage, if you do use translanguaging, Nair has given all the very strong reasons why it's beneficial. It is not, there is no loss to the target language learning. In fact, it enriches learning. It provides benefits to children. It values their own languages. But it needs to be communicated to both the pupils, the students, to the parents, and if possible, it needs to be a whole school approach where teachers are using this across the curriculum. So it really does provide an inclusive ethos.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I myself learned a lot from this session and how to use picture books. And I want to come back maybe to the question we started with. How many languages do your students speak?
I myself learned a lot from this session.
I think I can hear my voice, but yeah, I'll go back to the question I started with, which is how many languages do your students speak? So this article invites you to stop fighting with the reality and start maybe teaching with it. I think that that marks the end of our session. And if you'd like to know more about the strategies and what translanguaging means and how you can use picture books for that, you can read the article. The link will be left in the chat. Thank you, Nair, and thank you, Gail. Thank you both. Thank you to everyone watching, and happy International Mother Language Day. And thank you for all the languages you bring into the classroom. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.